You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for coming back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I'm Ryan, or JR, and I'm hosting this week. So this week's guest is someone that I've been connected to for a few years now, and I've really enjoyed keeping up with her journeys throughout that time. And she was also very encouraging to me last year when my thru hike did not play out the way that I thought it was going to on the AT. She recently completed a trail that I had not heard of, and I was really curious to hear more and learn more about all of her different trail experiences. So that's how I ended up chatting with Lisa today for the interview. So great conversation. I think everyone will be able to get something from it, whether it's advice or learning about some new trails or hearing some unique perspectives on hiking that may be new for folks. Lisa will specifically talk about her experience being a female hiker over the age of 50 and what that's like, and advice and kind of words of wisdom for others that may fit that category and may have some questions or uncertainties about backpacking and hiking, especially by themselves. So really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you all are able to get something good out of it. So let's go over to that conversation now. All right, so I am on today with Lisa to talk about some hiking. How are you doing, Lisa?
Doing great. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing very, very good. I was saying a little before this that you have spoiled us by putting together a great outline about the conversation today. So I'm going to have that new bar for all of our future guests to submit an outline before we start chatting. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. That's what happens when you're retired. You have more time to do things like that. So, so anything that I could do to make it easier, that's I guess that's a good thing.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. You know, we've kind of connected a few times in the past about some of your hiking journeys, and it's been great to keep up with some of your treks that you've been on. And so, you know, we'll cover a variety of those, but obviously I'd love to start with the Appalachian Trail and kind of just hear more about when you began backpacking on the AT and how it evolved over time.
Absolutely. So while I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about me, but I do want to share some of the trails that I've hiked
Sure.
and why I chose them and what they've taught me. So in my early 50s, in 2013, I retired from law enforcement, and I was pretty cynical. I definitely had lost hope in humanity to some degree after being in law enforcement for many years, and so I actually decided to get on the Appalachian Trail. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I certainly had read some books and had done a few day hikes on the trail in North Carolina, which is my native state. But I took off in May of 2013, and it was really about reconnecting with a higher power. I kind of lost my way for a while. So I am very goal driven. So I told my family and friends that I was going to through hike the Appalachian Trail. And so, of course, they thought I was crazy. But when I set a goal, I'm pretty determined that I'm going to complete that goal. So May 7th, 2013, started at Springer Mountain. Didn't take me long before it started raining. It rained and it rained. It rained and it rained some more. And in 2013, as it turned out, similar to 2003, it was one of the rainiest seasons on the Appalachian Trail in the history of the trail. And so as far as completers who completed the Appalachian Trail in 2013, it's a much smaller list than most years. So quitting was never an option. Physically, it was extremely challenging. The trail was nothing but a stream of water. It was muddy. My feet, I could not keep them dry. I had constant blisters. I had infections on my feet. My gear was wet. It was muddy. And I couldn't stay dry either. And sometimes it was very cold. So, but I kept pushing along, and I made it in 3 months, August 3rd, 2013. I made it into Pennsylvania. I crossed into Pennsylvania from Maryland, and ended up getting bit on the neck by a black widow spider.
Wow.
So I had about a mile and a half. Well, actually, I had about an hour and a half to go before I could get to a road in Waynesboro so that I could call and get some help. So basically, the venom from the spider rushed through my system, through my heart. And by the time I made it there, I was able to get an ambulance to come and pick me up and took me to the emergency room at the hospital in Waynesboro. So while I was talking to the doctor in the ER, he said, "Are you having problems swallowing?" And I said, "Yes," and that's all I remember. So I coded at that point. My heart stopped, and I had to be resuscitated as a result of the venom from the black widow bite. So August 3rd, 2013, I had to come off the trail. He wouldn't let me get back on the trail until I had a stress test. So I had to return back to Charlotte, which is where I was living at the time in North Carolina. I had a stress test. Obviously, my heart was fine. So it wasn't until about mid-September that I was able to get back on the AT in Waynesboro. So I got back on, and I made it into Duncannon in Pennsylvania, a little bit over halfway on the AT at that time, and that's where I had to come off that year. So I wasn't able to complete my through hike, which was very disappointing. So one of the things, though, that I realized, because I was new to backpacking, many people I noticed were hiking the trail in a different way, and that was called slack packing. And so I learned that slack packing was one of the ways that, you could have a lighter pack and basically have someone pick you up and drop you off at the trail in the evening and the next morning. And it actually made it easier on my body. And I discovered that the actual camping itself was becoming not as enjoyable for me as it was in the beginning. I preferred staying in hostels or hotels or with trail angels. And so when I returned to the AT in 2014, I took my personal vehicle, drove up into, actually that year I took it up to New York and New Jersey, and was only able to be on the trail for a couple weeks in 2014, but was able to hire shuttles and other Uber and Lyft to get me from place to place. So I completed the Appalachian Trail in 2016. It took me from 2014 to 2016, a few weeks each of those summers to complete the trail. Overall, it took me a little over 5 months to complete the AT. And so I summited Mount Katahdin August the 11th of 2016.
Wow.
That was my AT experience. It wasn't exactly as I had started, but that's part of the beauty of hiking the AT. That's part of the beauty of life. You have to be flexible. Many people thought I was crazy to continue after I had actually died on the Appalachian Trail.
Wow.
But I was determined. I had set a goal to complete it, and I did. And so I'm very proud of that. And so I was 56 years old whenever I finished the trail.
Wow. Well, I mean, thank you for sharing that. It's such a great reminder of everyone's story being so different. But my goodness, that experience with a black widow, probably the worst place to get bit as well. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
we talked earlier about, I was doing my wilderness first responder research this weekend, and as far as toxicology goes, that's about as bad as it gets. So that is,
It is.
oh my goodness. I mean, it's encouraging to me too, everyone's trail journey does look a little different. And then to hear you're able to go back and complete it is just fantastic. So, I'd love to hear some more. You may have already covered this obviously with the big one, but do you have any other specific like moments or memories on the trail that were really special to you?
As I told you before, my reason for hiking the AT was to kind of regenerate my faith in humanity and also my faith in God. And so I must admit, within the first few days, that happened. And so shortly after I started at Springer, I met some wonderful people and was able to really reconnect with some really good people, some really kind people. And so for me, that's what the AT was about for me. It gave me a sense of hope and a hope for the future of for our people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so special. And that, that's something that I see. And even in this, podcasting with the storytelling and everyone's journey, it does give you hope. And, people come to the trail for so many different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some big, some little, some, and the way it brings people together in that, I obviously, you know that as I do, is just really powerful.
Absolutely. That's definitely, it is definitely a trail that is, that has a lot of people on it, which is a positive and a negative.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and whenever I started, it was something that I needed. Another trail that we'll talk about next, which is the Mounts to Sea Trail, is a very different experience, and so is not a trail with a lot of people. So
Mm-hmm.
you would hike that trail, or I hiked that trail for a different reason. But the AT definitely gave me a sense of being one with nature. It's amazing in the 3 months that I was on in 2013. I know I had an encounter in Shenandoah National Park black with a black bear and the mother and 2 of her cubs. And I had absolutely no fear whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I basically just stood on the trail, took some pictures of her. I dropped my hiking pole, picked it up, and just started walking away along the trail. It was as if we both shared
Yeah.
nature together, and there was almost no distinction between her being a bear and me being a human. So that was probably a little stupid on my part, but it's just one of the things that happens. You become one. The AT definitely reconnected me to the higher power, which was exactly what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I did discover as a result of the Appalachian Trail was I love to hike. I don't love to camp. And so I discovered that fortunately after 3 months. And so I'm able to now as I hike, I learned that I love to hike long trails.
Mm-hmm.
And so while there's nothing wrong with day hikes, I definitely like hiking trails that are, 100 or plus miles. So that has allowed me since 2016, since I finished the AT, to pick trails that, would take maybe several weeks, several months, or even several years to finish. And so we'll talk about some of those next.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have been very interested in the Mountains to Sea Trail lately, and especially recently, moving to Asheville and being so close
Yeah.
to it. It's really kind of piqued my interest, and I know that a lot of other people have been curious about it. So I'd love to hear more, how and when you decided that trail was something you wanted to take on.
Sure. So after completing the AT in 2013, being that I was from North Carolina, grew up in North Carolina, was born there, I realized that the long trail in North Carolina was called the Mountains to Sea Trail. And so in 2017, the year after I completed the AT, I got on the Mountains to Sea Trail. Many of my family is from the Winston-Salem,
Okay,
Forsyth County area in the Piedmont
sure.
part of the state. And so, fortunately, I was able to utilize their services
Mm-hmm.
to shuttle me, particularly the Piedmont area. For those of you who don't know a lot about the Mounts to Sea Trail, it's about 44 years old. It's 1,175 miles. It starts at Clingman's Dome in the western part of North Carolina, and it travels across the state, kind of winds across the state to Jockey's Ridge State Park at the Outer Banks. So while there are hundreds of miles of the trail that are still on blacktop, it's not a
Mm-hmm.
completed trail. It's not all off road. There are 3 ways that the Friends of the Mounts to Sea allow you to traverse the trail. You can either hike it, you can bike part of it, or you can kayak part of it, particularly the Neuse River and the Yadkin River.
Oh, cool.
And so I hiked all of it except for the Neuse River from Raleigh to New Bern, which is almost 200 miles of kayaking on the Neuse. So for me, the highlight of the trip was actually that. Hope Floats NC, North Carolina, is a nonprofit that every April they partner with the Mounts to Sea Trail, and anyone that wants to kayak the Neuse, starting in Raleigh and actually going to Oriental, North Carolina, can join them for an 8-day kayaking trip.
Oh, wow.
The goal is to raise money for cancer research.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2019, April of 2019, I joined Hope Floats NC, and I kayaked from Raleigh. And that year we ended up having to get out in New Bern because the water was so rough. We couldn't make it that last day into Oriental. And so we raised over $40,000 for the American Cancer Society. And the group of kayakers, and they're pretty serious paddlers, they were just a lot of fun. We had a great time together. And I still stay in touch with them and with their group. And so that's how I was able to get a little over 200 miles of it. So I didn't have to hike on the
Mm-hmm.
blacktop in the eastern part of the state. So that definitely was kind of the highlight. But the Mountains to Sea Trail is a great trail for anyone who is looking for solitude, quiet, serenity. It's a very different experience in the AT. There's no
Mm-hmm.
shelters. A lot of the areas there's not camping available, and most of the camping you have to do at like a state park.
Gotcha.
So I did not through hike. I never intended to through hike the Mountains to Sea Trail. I started in 2017 and I completed it at the Outer Banks in October of 2019. I'm glad I did it, but again, it's a very different experience and feel than the AT.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just perplexed by it just from the little I know from the different sections. I mean, starting at Klingman's Dome, on the AT and some of the highest elevations
Yeah.
in, this side of the Mississippi. I know you go over Mount Mitchell, the
Yep.
Piedmont region, then the beach. I mean, I think that kind of diverse hiking experience is something that is hard to come by in a lot of places. So is that
Absolutely.
something that changed how you hiked how did that play a role in it?
Yeah. That was actually part of the beauty of the Mountains to Sea Trail is if you start in the west, you're going to start in the mountains. And so that's, you don't have to, but you get the hard part out with first, you can finish it. And then by the time you get to like Pilot Mountain in the Piedmont, you're starting to get some flatter terrain. Um, Part of the beauty of the Mountains to Sea Trail is the people you meet along the way. A lot of the people you meet on the front porches of their homes, and you start a conversation with them about the Mountains to Sea Trail. Many of them have no idea that there's an 1,175-mile trail in front of their house that goes from the mountains to the sea of North Carolina. And so, another thing that you get to have encounters with are their dogs. Many of the dogs are not leashed, and so I definitely had some run-ins with some pretty serious dogs who were not happy that I was in their territory. So I had to get some dog spray that I had to use a few times
Oh,
to
wow.
get some dogs away. But again, that's part of the beauty of actually walking and hiking in somebody's yard, which is essentially what you're doing, or in a dirt road in front of their house. So, um, and then by the time you get to the Outer Banks, you get to hike probably about 90 miles in the sand. And I don't know about you, but that's not exactly easy hiking either. It may be flat, but it's definitely a workout. So it was it's a very physically demanding trail. It's not
Mhm.
as well maintained as the Appalachian Trail is. So there are parts of the trail that you better have your guide with you. If you don't, you have no idea where you're going. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, but I do recommend it for someone who's looking for a little bit of solitude and some variety and a lot of diversity. That's a great trail.
Yeah, and I feel like it's had a lot of good momentum lately just from my
Yeah.
own, experience and seeing people talk about it and being out on it. And a lot of, I'm on it a decent amount in Nashville just because I'm near it and I just enjoy, after work being able to go out and do a trail run or just do a quick section. And a lot of people are asking questions about it and curious or have
Yeah.
heard about it and are out there. And it always kind of, I smile a little bit. Sometimes people, I don't know what it is. A lot of people ask me a lot when I'm out there. If I guess maybe I know what I'm doing. I look like I know what I'm doing. I usually don't, but someone will ask like, where does this go? Like, where does it go? Like, how far does it go? And I'm like, I mean, technically you can go to the Outer Banks if you don't stop. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, it's very shocking to them
Yeah.
in the moment. That's always a fun thing to get to, teach them about it. But I
Yeah.
think that's amazing, telling someone that their house is on it. They're like, and that's the first time they're hearing of it.
Yeah. It is. And it actually definitely instigates a lot of conversation for sure.
That's so fun. Well, I'm thinking about that, you finishing in the Outer Banks, when you mentioned, I mean, that had to be special, just like finishing any trail. But were there any kind of reflections or after that journey, you come to a conclusion, things that maybe the trail taught you that you were able to see at the end of it?
I think the highlights for me of hiking the Mountains to Sea Trail, the highlight was definitely spending time with the Hope Floats NC folks. But
Hmm.
the other thing is just being able to walk through some of the small towns in North Carolina that I grew up hearing about but had never been to. And actually walking through the streets of those little towns, little mill towns, particularly in the Piedmont area,
Hmm.
was pretty special. And getting to have conversations with other North Carolinians about the trail and educating them about it was, I don't know, it felt good, and they were many of them, like you said, were pretty shocked that, there was a trail that went that far all the way across the state. So, the Mouse of Sea Trail does seem to have some pretty good momentum right now, and, I hope it continues so that they can get more and more of the trail into the woods and
Hmm.
off blacktop. Yeah, I think it will make that trail even more appealing.
Yeah, I really liked what you said too about speaking with folks in the small towns. I'm from
Yeah,
Southwest Virginia, and I studied Appalachian studies in college, and so I always just have a
yeah,
big heart for the region. And so
yeah,
while I always love the solitude that comes from hiking and backpacking, getting to go through some of those communities and chat with people there is just as special to me. So I'm thinking about that now in North Carolina, especially in the Piedmont area. There's probably a lot of similar places that would be just so great to get to experience on foot.
absolutely. I encourage you to keep experiencing the MST. It has a lot to offer.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Well, this next kind of, I'm going to call them a pairing. That might be the wrong term of trails. I'm just selfishly very curious about. I think I heard about them first from you. So
Okay.
um, I just haven't heard a ton about them, but I think it's the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal and the Great Allegheny Passage. Is that right?
That is correct.
So yeah, I'd love to hear more. How'd you decide on these hikes and
Sure.
what have they been like?
So these hikes are actually more for bikers, but that's
Okay.
not to say that those of us who are hikers can't make it a hiking trail. So that's what I did. So um, last in 2020, January of 2020, I moved from North Carolina and also Virginia to College Park, Maryland, and I also turned 60. And so, being that COVID started about the time that I arrived here, I knew that I needed to get on the trail somewhere. And so I did a little research in the C&O Canal. Towpath came up that starts in Washington, D.C. and ends in Cumberland, Maryland. It's 184 and a half miles. And it's essentially the horse towpath that was used back in the 18 and early 1900s to get materials from DC to Cumberland and vice versa.
Wow.
And so horses pulled the barges through the canal, and it follows the Potomac River the entire way. So it's a lot of history in the C&O Canal. Part of the Appalachian Trail is actually on the C&O Canal in and around West Virginia.
Oh, wow. I did not
So
know that.
yeah,
Huh.
so I was familiar with the C&O, and so I did start it in DC last summer and finished it in Cumberland. It took me about 2 weeks. Again, it was 184 and a half miles. And so it's a flat trail, relatively flat. It follows along the locks and the aqueducts of the canal. And there's actually placards along the way that you can learn, where George Washington and his men crossed the river and that kind of stuff. And so it was pretty quiet because of COVID.
Mhm.
So it actually kind of made for a pretty peaceful hike. And then the Great Allegheny Passage it actually starts in Cumberland where the C&O ends, and it goes up to Pittsburgh. And so the Great Allegheny Passage, also called the Gap, is a rails to trails project. It was an old railroad, and the railroad went out of business. And so the Rails to Trails Conservancy was able to turn that railroad into essentially a hiking and biking trail.
Hmm.
And so I started it this spring, and I started in Pittsburgh, and I'm hiking down to Cumberland. It's 150 miles total. And again, it's a relatively flat trail, and I should be finished. I have one more hike left from Frostburg to Cumberland, Maryland, and
Okay.
I hope to finish it on July the 3rd. So I'll have that hike. So between the two, I can say that I've hiked from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Nice.
and
Nice.
it's a total of 334 and a half miles. So it's been a lot of fun. The gap is quite beautiful. It goes along the Monongahela River, the Youghiogheny Rivers, and the Castleman Rivers,
Okay.
whereas the C&O Canal follows the Potomac River. So if you're a hiker and you love being along water, these hikes are perfect for that. You pretty much don't get water out of your sight
Hmm.
the entire 335 miles. So I've enjoyed it. At age, as I get older, I'm finding that hiking up and down the mountains is not quite as easy on my knees
Right.
as it used to be. So having a trail that's a lot flatter, but it
Yeah.
still allows me to, average 15, 20 miles a day on the trail. I can still get my miles in and my fitness in. I just don't have to work quite as hard.
Absolutely. I mean, I love history. So just the little reading I was doing about these hikes, I was just fascinated. And there is something about experiencing a place in history on foot. I mean, it really is
Yeah.
different than driving through it or biking through it. Not that those aren't special, but it is really something. So, what I'm just curious about those trails. You mentioned that they're normally biking trails and things. Are they as established as let's say, the Appalachian Trail as far as accommodations along the way or road crossings? What's that like?
Yeah. So both the C&O and the Great Allegheny Passage pass through trail towns just like the Appalachian Trail does. Um, and so there are definitely accommodations. There's tent camping accommodations along both trails. Um, there are also hotels and hostels along both trails. So, and easy resupply. If you're going to bike the trails, you could probably knock it out in 2 or 3 days if you wanted. If you wanted to do some pretty serious miles, or you can, string it out and make it a little bit longer. But the good thing is that you have no shortage of places to lot for lodging. You have no shortage of food, water. All that is easily available to you on both of these trails.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm wanting to learn more about them, and I'm excited. This is the first kind of guest we've had that's been able to share more about them. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, with those journeys in mind, I'd love to just talk more a little broadly just about your experiences, and specifically, what are some things you'd want other female hikers in particular to know about hiking and backpacking?
Sure. So I think that hiking in particular is an activity that is so beneficial. We're actually going to go over some of those benefits here in just a minute. That I think the thing that tends to keep some women from hiking, and particularly solo hiking, is fear and just uncertainty with how to do it. What do you need? And so a lot of times they feel like they have to have someone else to hike with. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult sometimes to coordinate multiple schedules to get on the trail. And so in the end, they end up not hiking at all. So the one of the things I want to talk about is, number one, don't be afraid to hike or backpack, and to hike and backpack solo if you're a woman. So why can I say that? Well, first of all, prepare yourself in advance
Hmm.
before you go. So in other words, think about some what if scenarios of worst case scenarios that can happen to you, and problem solve how to figure out how to work through it, before you actually get on the trail. Now, I've got to be honest, very few bad things have ever happened to me on the trail, and I've hiked thousands of miles. But that's not to say that I haven't planned out what I would do
Sure.
if something
Sure.
were to happen. And so the more that you can educate yourself about hiking and backpacking and about safety on the trail, it would just give you that much more confidence as a woman to go ahead and step out on the trail as a solo hiker. Some of the ways that you can educate yourself is through reading, magazines and books about backpacking and hiking. Talk with experts, hiking experts at some of the, outdoor stores, or if have friends or family members who are hikers or backpackers, particularly women backpackers,
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation with them and just ask them about what they're afraid of and how they work through those. Listen to podcasts. Listen to one of the things I did right before I got on the Appalachian Trail was a week before, I actually took a NOLS class on wilderness first aid for 2 days on the weekend, so that knowing that I was gonna be hiking the Appalachian Trail solo, what would happen what if something happened to me and I needed to be able to figure out how to take care of myself? And so taking that NOLS class, which I think is, National Outdoor Leadership School, was very helpful to me, and it gave me a lot of confidence about how to handle anything that I could come across, from an injury perspective. Learn all you can from whatever source you can, because the more that you arm yourself with knowledge about how to hike and how to backpack, the more confidence you're gonna have as a woman or as a male as well. The other thing is, as an athlete, my coach always said, "You play like you practice, and you practice how you play." And this is true for backpacking as well. So, the more that I know about backpacking and the more that I know how to problem solve if something happens to me when I'm out hiking and backpacking, the more confidence I will have whenever I'm actually out on the trail and something does happen. And so, the more I know, the less fearful I am. And so, my advice to women is don't be afraid to hike and to hike solo, but educate yourself and prepare yourself before you go.
That's a great thing to share with folks because it can sometimes seem, daunting on where to start, and you feel like you
Yeah.
may not be able to know all of it. No, none of us ever will, but it does take some time and some kind of chipping away at equipping what you need. I liked what you said about just head on think about those fears you have, name them, identify them, and work backwards from there. That's a great way to see that while there are things, to be concerned about,
Yeah.
the ways we can manage them and prepare for them are actually quite robust.
Yes,
So that's great.
absolutely.
That's great.
So, the next thing that I want female hikers to know is learn the benefits of being in nature on a trail. And so there's so much research that has been done and is still being done about all the benefits of nature. So, mental health benefits, for example, boosting your mood, reducing your stress, calming your anxiety, lowering your risk of depression. And one of the things that I need people to really think about is open up your senses. When you're out in nature, listen to the sounds, feel,
Hmm. Yeah.
see things, smell things. I mean, there's so much going on in nature that sometimes we just walk through it and don't pay attention to it. But slow down and really pay attention to what nature has to offer us in terms of our senses. The physical benefits, it builds muscle, it improves your balance. I mean, the heart and lung benefits of being on hiking in nature is just amazing. It sharpens our mind, it increases our creativity, it calms us, makes our relationships happier, gets us away from technology, and it actually creates a sense of awe.
Yeah.
When you're in nature, you realize how small you are compared to how big the world is. And it kind of puts things in perspective. It's also good for us in that if we hike to places and walk to places, that we're replacing automobiles. And so
Yeah.
we reduce the carbon footprint. So that's, I find myself, walking to the grocery store, just walking to get a coffee versus driving somewhere. And so that's one of the other benefits of just walking and hiking so that we don't have to use our automobiles. And so along those same lines, increasing our connection to nature, we develop a positive relationship with the natural world, which hopefully means that we are more committed to conservation efforts. And so, we want to protect nature, and so we want to protect the world and the fate of it. Another thing is our connection to spirit is much more direct in nature than it is in an urban environment or in a building. So when you're in communion with nature, pure spirit becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
So nature makes us feel alive from the inside.
Absolutely. I want to go hike right now. Like just hearing this, I'm
Yeah.
like, what am I doing right now? I mean, this is a great conversation, but as soon as we get done, I'm going to go get on the Mountains of Sea Trail. It's because you're
Awesome.
so right in
Good.
all of those ways. And, that sense of awe, I love that. I love that word. There's something about looking in the distance and seeing somewhere you're going to get to on foot. It's just something about it. That
Yeah.
scale of the world is so powerful.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. It's a beauty. One of the things I read was that the average American spends 93% of their time indoors, in a building, or in a car.
Hmm.
That leaves 7% of our time outdoors. It has to have effect on our health in a negative way. And so, I hope people will begin to love and go outdoors. The earlier you can get young people to start going outdoors, the better. And it will be better for their health as well. Nature is definitely the best healer. It provides emotional balance. It keeps you focused. It helps you with solution-oriented thinking, and it's just an overall resilient approach to life. So, I mean, I can go on with the benefits of being outdoors in nature, and even if you can't get out in the woods, just being outdoors has a benefit as well. Just being in the sun, I mean, the
Hmm.
importance of the sunshine to our body is proven over and over again. And so, if for no other reason, just like you said, just being outdoors in nature has just so many benefits that, that alone should be enough to just get out there.
And getting to experience that, especially from a young age, is great habits to build. And a lot of us know these things, but if the last year has taught us anything, it's wow. Like I really actually do need to spend time outside because I've
Yeah.
felt how things change when I haven't. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like I said, I feel like I need to be on a trail right now because you were so right about those things. But
Yeah.
I don't want us to lose focus too much.
Yeah.
I did want to ask too about maybe some tips or guidance you would offer to female backpackers over 50 and what that experience might look like.
So some of the tips that I have for backpackers, particularly women over 50, is, and I do this, carry a communication device with you. It can be a cell phone, some type of GPS device, or a satellite messenger. Particularly if you're going for a long hike and you're not sure of the trail, it's a new trail for you. Just for safety reasons, that's probably a good idea. Make sure you condition before you get on the trail. Doesn't have to be anything significant, but particularly if the trail is going to be challenging,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably best to do some conditioning, even if it's at the gym. The ideal way to train for a hike is to hike.
Right.
But if you don't have that luxury, then a little bit of training, even within your house, is helpful. The next thing is to make sure that you plan and research the trail. Know its difficulty rating so that you have a good sense of what you're going to encounter when you get on the trail. Ideally, you want to carry a topo map of the trail and know how to use and read the topo map before you get on the trail and before you start hiking. Make sure you check the weather. Another thing is respect and know the wildlife in that area,
Yeah.
so that you know how to handle a situation if one were to arise. If you're hiking with someone else and you have some medical issues, make sure you let them know what they are before you hike, and vice versa. Make sure that your hiking shoes or boots, whatever you choose to wear, fit properly and that you have worn them in a little bit. You don't want a brand new pair of shoes particularly on a difficult trail. You want to have a pair that you know are not going to rub or cause some problems with your feet.
Yeah, it's not a good time to be testing out a brand new
Yeah.
type of shoe. You're like, oh, this looks like it'll work, and then you find out 20 miles in. So yeah.
Yeah, probably best to try those, walk around the house or the apartment with those for a few days before you get on the trail. The backpack, the day pack, whatever you choose to, use, make sure that you get one that's properly fitted and that it's able to carry the gear and the essentials that you need to carry. And then the other thing is, layering your clothes, no cotton whatsoever. Make sure that you wear gear that you can, take off as you get hot, and then, always pack some rain gear because typically it will rain whenever you're out on a hike, whether you, were expecting it or not. So those are some of the tips that I have for particularly women, and
Mhm.
hikers and backpackers over 50.
Well, that's great, and I appreciate you sharing your experience about that. Um, it was great to hear about obviously your AT journey, and that's still kind of giving me chills a little bit. I mean, to have that type of experience and to be able to get yourself off the trail and then go back and finish, that's really something. So it was great to hear about that. Looking ahead, I'm just curious. You don't have to reveal any dates or anything specifically, but are there any journeys or trails that you have your eye on or you're curious about, or you're like, maybe that could work out at some point?
Well, Ryan, unfortunately for me, I have so many and there's so little time. I could tell you a few that I am definitely gonna do, and that is,
Okay.
2023, I'm going to do the El Camino, France.
Oh, that's so cool.
So, that's for sure, and I would love to do, the John Muir Trail, the Colorado Trail. I don't think I'm gonna do the PCT or the Continental Divide Trail. I don't think they're for me. I may do parts of them,
Hmm.
but, I don't anticipate, doing the entire through hike trail of
Sure.
those 2. But there's just so many trails and so little time to get to them all. Um, but I will get to as many as I can in the time that I have left. That's the plan right now anyway.
Right on. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about those journeys, and I really appreciate all you're able to share with us today. So thank you for your time, Lisa.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and, hopefully some folks were able to pick up a few pointers, and, I hope to see you guys on the trail.
Great. Thanks.
Mhm.
Wow, really great conversation with Lisa today, and I just really enjoyed hearing her perspectives and wisdom she was able to share from her journeys. My goodness, hearing about that through hike attempt on the AT with the Black Widow bike just gave me chills. I mean, it's scary stuff. It's a good reminder that things can happen. It's important to be prepared, but ultimately, stuff can happen when you're out in the woods in the backcountry. But to pretty much be dead in the ER and come back and still want to finish the trail, I think I tip my hat to anyone with that in the rearview mirror for them. So what a just really fantastic story to hear, and glad Lisa is still out there on trails and still knocking out miles even after that really scary and frightening experience. So it is also great to hear about those other trails. I'm really curious to learn more about them. I know that they may not fit the typical mold of backpacking, but I think they're great. Any way you can be out and covering ground on foot is fantastic, and hope everyone's curious to learn more about trails like those. So, like I mentioned in the interview, I feel like getting out on a trail after all of that the advice that Lisa was able to share. So right, the benefits of being outdoors, and especially after a year like this, I think we all are aware that that's just something we need more of. So that's all from me. I'll pass it over to Steve to wrap up any parts of the show, but I'm going to go out and get on the Mountains of Sea Trail.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. Lisa certainly had a lot of experience to share, and I hope that she gave you all some perspectives that you can use on your own trails in the future. So yes, it's me again, Steve on Mighty Blue. I've got a bit of news this week, so stick with us after I chat with Katie, and I'll share it with you then. But before we go on to Katie, thanks again to our donors. They're really keeping us afloat right now, let me tell you, because the cost of doing this keeps increasing. This week we got monthly donations from Todd Withrow and Suzanne Johnson, and a new one from Obsessed Sportswear Limited. I'm guessing that this isn't his or her name, but thanks anyway, Obsessed. Much appreciated. I got a nasty $240 bill from HostGator this week, so every little bit helps. If you'd like to help out, remember you can donate by going to hikingradionetwork.com and clicking on one of the many donate buttons all over the site. So now it's Katie, and if you recall, she was at last leaving the Shennies last week and about to hit the roller coaster. Let's hear how she did. Here's Katie. Well, we're back on with Katie. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hi, Steve. I'm doing great.
And for once, you're not surrounded by the leafy paths of Shenandoah, are you? Where are you now?
That's right.
Yeah,
Goodbye,
where are you now?
Shenandoah.
Yes.
I am in Harpers Ferry and taking a 0 day. Got here yesterday afternoon. So,
What do you think of it? What do you think of the town?
well, it's kind of like two towns. You have the regular town, and then you have the little historic section. And
Yes.
the historic section's kind of cool.
So did you sign in? Did you go to the get your photograph taken?
I did. I signed in. They took my photograph, and the day I started, I told them that I was planning to finish up at Katahdin and then jump back and do the section that I missed. So, and they gave out the little tag. So,
Oh, right.
it was fun.
I got
Yeah.
mine in 2019 there as well, because I think you used to collect the tag back at the bottom of Amicalola, but because I'd done the approach trail before in 2014, I didn't do it in 2019. I went because you can go to that little starting point at the car park, which is just
Right.
north on the trail. I walked back up to touch the sign at the top of Amicalola, then went down through it.
Exactly.
So what colour's the tag this year? I don't even know.
It's blue.
Oh, nice. Mighty blue.
blue
Should have been
tag.
the year I
There
did
you
it.
go.
Yeah. It's a mighty blue. So you're here. You've spent quite a long time now out camping most nights. Is that right?
Shelters and camping. Yeah.
And how's that been? That's given you some
Good.
sort of rhythm to your hike now, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I can't remember how many shelters. So either slept in the shelter if it was raining, or, camped, set up my tent near the shelter. One night I stealth camped, so I'd be a little bit further into the roller coaster, so I wasn't having to do too many peaks,
Yeah.
climbs and descents in one day. So, yeah, so it's worked out nicely.
How did you enjoy it? And I know you weren't looking forward to shelters really, and you only go in there when it's raining, you say. Is that a good decision, or do you just not like camping out in the rain?
I think for the time it was a good decision. Literally, there was one day that we had easily 12 hours of driving rain.
Oh my gosh.
I, would not have wanted to have to clean up after that. So, yeah, I think that was a good decision. Not as many people in the shelters as, when I started.
Right.
When I started, Georgia and North Carolina, they were always packed.
Of course, yeah.
With people. So and I was keeping my filter in my sleeping bag so it wouldn't freeze. So very different now, not as many people. So it's just a different experience right now.
So you had 12 hours of rain. It hasn't all been rain though. You've had a lot of heat as well, haven't you?
Hot, muggy still right before the rains would come. And then, of course, following that, you end up with low humidity and sunny, beautiful days. So I've had a mix of it all.
So you really are running the full gamut of everything then. So have you been on a mountain yet when it's pretty near the top of a mountain, when it started thunder and lightning?
Oh, yeah. I was coming into Bear's Den, actually, and it was the lightning was pretty close. It was booming pretty loud. And I thought, well,
it's kind of frightening.
Would be a spectacular end of the story, wouldn't it? So
But it's kind.
But
Don't you think it's kind of frightening? You know especially when you see the flash and you hear it almost straight away. You know it ain't too far away, don't you?
The flash and the boom simultaneously. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So, no, but I made it to Bear's Den, before it got really, really nasty. It was just kicking up and put a little spring in my step. So
talk to me then about the roller coaster. How did you find it?
Yeah.
Was it what you expected?
Okay. I'll be honest. I felt like it was not as strenuous as North Georgia and North Carolina, some of those on me. So, but I was doing kind of a different hike. I was slowing way down and, especially descents, a lot of rocky, climbing down, rocky descents. So, and climbing up rocky descents.
Yeah,
so,
it's one of those parts of the trail where there's no respite, is there? You either are going downhill or you're going uphill.
Exactly.
And that's a good test for your knee, obviously. How's your knee coped with that?
Oh my gosh, it's doing great. And I think it's because I am hiking a different hike than I did before. I go and my parameters are either I stop every hour, or if I start to feel, any kind of twinging or pain, I just take a little break, take the pack off, even if I'm sitting right in the middle of the trail because there is no spot. But it's working out well. I did have another fall.
Did you?
Literally probably 500 yards after the roller coaster.
So you didn't fall on the roller coaster, you fell after it.
No. You're walking across boulders on these streams in the roller coaster, big boulders, and you're stepping from stone to stone. No accident there. I get to a muddy area and fall into a pile of rotting logs and vegetation. Nice.
It's always fun.
Nice and mushy.
It's funny, what you're laughing and we're laughing about it, but really, it's no joke to fall at our age, is it?
It is no joke, but I'm lucky. It's been in the mud every time.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, but you take when you take a tumble, I don't know what it is. You seem to bounce up again when you're younger, don't you? But when you take a tumble, I almost just wait for a second or two to see if I'm not dead.
And you do this body scan.
Yes, right. Yeah. So but you've not hurt yourself in any of your falls yet so far, which is a good thing.
Oh, no. Thank goodness. I think it's because you're paying so much more attention when you're on the rocks. Right. And then you get to this flat area and you're like, okay, now I can cruise.
Yeah. And I'm interested in what you say about you're now listening. You sent me some bullet points before we actually talked about this. And you said that now you are a different hiker. You are listening to your body and making decisions throughout the day. If that is the one big takeaway that you really have learned about the hike, isn't it? And I learned very similarly. Yeah. I learned you had to listen to your body. Do you still see people out there not listening to their body?
Yeah, but I think they're a lot stronger than I am. they can just plow through it,
There'll be a time, though. There'll be a time. We none of us are impervious to this, and so
That's right.
when you take a fall or when you overdo it a bit, your muscles will only put up with so much, however young you think you are.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. And I think it's I think I'm smarter now, maybe. So I'm just trying, just to. Like I had a couple of days where I was planning to stop early, stop at a shelter.
Sure.
But I would sit there for an hour and rest, and then I'd be like, I really do feel good,
Right.
So I would go on maybe a few more miles and set up a stealth camp, or I would just go on to the next shelter. But it never felt like I was just driving and pushing myself. It was always about, at the end of the day, I want to have a good tired, but I don't want to be dragging in and dreading filtering water,
yes.
dreading making my dinner. So that's the approach I'm taking now, and it has helped a lot.
I think that was an early miles thing for me. You know, getting into camp and thinking, oh my God, I've got to go down about 200 feet to get some water, and it's just exhausting, isn't it? You know, just absolutely exhausting. So you're having fun. You went to Bear's Den. What do you think of Bear's Den? I think it's a great hostel, don't you?
Yeah, it's nice. It's really, it's clean. It's kind of a no frills place, but really, really, it's a nice place to stop and rest. Yes.
Did you stay in the hostel or did you just camp outside?
No, I stayed in the hostel. I stayed in the bunk room.
All right.
And it was. I felt like people were pleasant.
And do you go down the little walk down the road to the brewery or not?
Absolutely.
Quite right too.
I got myself a burger and a beer and enjoyed that.
Life is good.
Yeah. Life was good.
So what's coming up? I'm trying to think beyond there. Where's next?
Well, so I saw there's Dahlgren's Campground is in 2 days maybe. When I leave here, it's only going to be about a 5 mile to the first shelter, and I'm going to do that. So I found I averaged, and I was doing like 8.5 miles, an average for over the week.
That's not bad. That's not bad. You're getting there.
Yeah. So, and then I thought I would try to just bump it up a little bit in the next week as far as miles go. But we'll be in Maryland in just a day or two, I think.
Well, no, I think you cross into Maryland straight away. I may be wrong here. It's almost straight away because you go
You're
over
right.
You go over the bridge and you're on the C&O Canal Path. That is a long darn flat path, I tell you. That is pretty dark. I remember doing that in heat both times. Oh my gosh, it was just boiling.
Oh man.
Yeah. Enjoy it.
That's right. You're right. So I'll cross over the Potomac, and that'll put me in Maryland.
Nice.
So,
another state.
And then I'm just going to kind of just do up my miles a bit, and, just kind of keep myself going and enjoying it. And,
cool.
Did you get
a copy of your picture at Harpers Ferry?
I forgot. So I'm going to. I was really tired.
I was going to put it in the show notes. I was going to put it in the show notes.
No. I'm going to go on my way out, and I'll definitely take a picture.
Try to take a picture, scan it if I've got time, because we're recording now nearly lunchtime on the Wednesday, and I've got to get this show out. But look, it's good that you're out the Shennies at last, and you're getting there now, and hopefully, you sound like you're still enjoying it. So keep on,
absolutely,
and we'll catch up again next week.
All right, great, Steve. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, then. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
She's probably spent more time in Shenandoah this year than some of the Rangers. But she's out now, and to be honest, while I didn't want to mention it last week, I thought that the roller coaster would really test her knee. The fact that she came through it so well speaks to the care she's taken in rehabilitating her body after her injury. Let's hope the good news keeps up. Now, my news. I know that most of you know that I'm off to do the John Muir Trail next month, and I'm really excited about that, but I'm concerned a bit about the elevation. But what I haven't mentioned until now is that the Scottish trip that I planned for last year of the West Highland Way, followed by Hadrian's Wall Path, a total of about, 180 to 200 miles, is now going ahead in early April next year. Dana and I are going to be doing a tour of the UK and Ireland, and I'm going to be staying on and doing those 2 short hikes afterwards. They should make really good podcasts, and I may even try to put out daily episodes for you all while I'm there. I may even do a live one. You never know. I just have to work out how to do that. So, with a bit of luck, in the next 10 months, I'll be able to do the John Muir Trail, at last, the West Highland Way, and Hadrian's Wall Path. There is something about staring at your 70th birthday in the near future that makes you want to achieve certain things. Hope that you're going to follow along with me. So that's it for another week, and as luck would have it, it'll be me back with the show next week with another fascinating guest. I'll see you next week.